The afternoon sun beat down hard on the small, quiet town. It was a place that most people would never think twice about, just another dot on the map. But for George, a 96-year-old veteran, this was home. He had spent his life serving in wars, traveling the world, and seeing things most people couldn't even imagine. But now, in his later years, he preferred peace, taking walks around the neighborhood, sitting on his porch, and reliving the memories of a time long past. George's house sat at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown grass and towering trees. It was a simple place, nothing fancy, but it had been his home for decades. He enjoyed the solitude, the quietness of the street, and the peace that came with the years of service he had given. But on this particular day, something was different. Something was brewing in the air, something George couldn't ignore. It started with the sound of motorcycles revving, loud, obnoxious engines that vibrated the walls of his house. George's eyes narrowed as the noise grew louder, closer. He knew exactly who it was. A gang of bikers, known for their rowdiness, had taken to frequenting the area. George wasn't the type to shy away from trouble, but he had learned over the years to pick his battles. As the group of 5 bikers rolled up in front of his house, George didn't move. He stayed seated in his old wooden rocking chair, the creaking of the chair blending with the rumble of their engines. He watched them pull up one by one, parking their motorcycles in a careless, haphazard manner. The bikers were rowdy, young men who clearly had no respect for the people in the town. They wore leather jackets, tattoos that told their own stories, and arrogant expressions that screamed trouble. The leader of the group, a tall man with a thick beard and a grimace on his face, was the first to approach George. He eyed the elderly man in his chair with amusement, as if George were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Well, well, look at this," the biker said with a sneer. "What's an old man like you doing out here all alone? You lost, or just looking for trouble?" George didn't respond. He simply sat there, his weathered face calm and unflinching. He had been through enough in his life to know that sometimes silence was the best response. The bikers circled around him, laughing and making crude jokes, clearly enjoying the power they thought they had over the old man. The leader of the bikers stepped forward, his boots crunching in the dirt as he towered over George. "You should be careful out here, old man," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "This is our territory, and you don't belong here." George's hand rested gently on his cane, his fingers twitching slightly as he felt the weight of the situation. But he didn't rise, didn't make a move. His eyes remained steady, fixed on the biker before him. Another one of the bikers, a younger man with a cocky smile, walked up to George and kicked the front of his chair, causing it to rock slightly. "What's the matter, Grandpa? Cat got your tongue?" George's gaze shifted to the group of bikers standing around him. They didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't understand that George wasn't just some frail old man waiting for his last days. He had lived a life full of hardships, and he wasn't about to be intimidated by these punks. With slow, deliberate movements, George reached into his pocket and pulled out an old cracked phone. The bikers were still laughing, still jeering, oblivious to the quiet strength that lay within the old man. George didn't speak, but his eyes betrayed a glint of something, a warning. As George dialed the number, the bikers paused, sensing the change in the air. There was something about the old man that commanded respect. George raised the phone to his ear, his expression as stoic as ever. The bikers began to quiet down, the loud laughter slowly fading as George spoke into the phone. "I need some help," he said calmly, his voice steady. You might want to send a few men my way. It's about to get ugly out here." The bikers exchanged confused glances as George continued to speak into the phone. They could see something had shifted. The atmosphere was no longer just a simple harassment situation. They didn't understand it, but something about the way George was speaking, the calm confidence in his voice, was making them uneasy. The leader of the bikers, still standing over George with a menacing glare, leaned in closer. "Who are you calling, old man? You really think anyone's going to come out here for you?" His voice was laced with mockery, but it faltered just a bit as George kept his gaze locked on him, never breaking the stillness. George didn't answer immediately, taking his time, as if savoring the moment. He could feel the shift in energy, the change in the biker's confidence. His call was going through, the tension rising with every second. Finally, George spoke, his voice low but commanding. "You'll see soon enough. Just stay right where you are, and we'll see how things play out." The bikers chuckled nervously, glancing at each other, unsure of how to react. The leader, trying to regain control of the situation, reached down to grab George's cane, planning to use it to taunt the old man further. But before he could touch it, a loud, rumbling sound interrupted the scene. The sound of engines approaching. The bikers froze, looking up. The sound of the engines grew louder, and within moments, a line of black SUVs appeared on the horizon, barreling down the dirt road toward them. The bikers exchanged frantic looks, their arrogant smiles now replaced with confused glances. They didn't know what to make of it. George's grip on his cane tightened as the vehicles pulled to a stop in front of his house. The SUV's doors opened simultaneously, and out stepped several men, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in tactical gear. Their serious expressions and the way they moved with precision sent a chill through the bikers. These weren't the kind of people you messed with. The bikers began to shift uneasily, their bravado slipping away as they watched the men step out of the vehicles. The leader took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. The man leading the tactical team, a man with a scar running across his cheek, approached George with a nod. "You called, sir," he said in a low, respectful voice. George gave him a slight nod in return, his expression still calm and unflinching. The bikers now realized the gravity of their situation. They had assumed George was just an old man who didn't know how to handle himself. They had been wrong. They had picked the wrong fight with the wrong person. "What is this, some kind of joke?" one of the bikers asked, his voice trembling now. "You think we're scared of some soldiers?" The man with the scar walked toward the leader, his eyes hard. "I think you should leave before things get ugly for you. You're trespassing in a way you don't understand." The leader of the biker's face turned pale as the reality hit him. He glanced around at his crew, who were equally unnerved by the unexpected appearance of these well-trained men. They were outnumbered and outclassed, and they knew it. George slowly stood up from his chair, his joints creaking, but his movements were measured and strong. He didn't say a word as he looked at the bikers, who now seemed unsure of what to do. They had thought they could push around an old man, but they were quickly realizing they had underestimated him and the network of people he had at his disposal. The bikers remained frozen in place, unable to make a move. Their tough exterior was crumbling under the weight of the situation, and the air was thick with the realization that they were no longer in control. The air was thick with tension. The bikers stood frozen, their once confident demeanor shattered by the arrival of the tactical team. The leader's hand trembled slightly as he looked between the men in military gear and George, who stood calmly in front of them. The reality of the situation was hitting him hard. "What the hell is this? Who are you people?" the leader demanded, trying to reclaim some sense of control. The scarred man leading the tactical team stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "We don't want trouble, but if you don't leave now, it's going to get worse for you." The leader scoffed, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. He glanced back at his gang, who were now visibly unnerved, unsure of how to proceed. They were outmatched, outclassed, and suddenly very aware of the mistake they had made. George stood silently, his eyes cold and calculating. He had been through worse, seen much more terrifying things in his life. These bikers were nothing compared to the battles he had fought, not just in wars, but in the quiet moments of his life. The old man had seen it all. The leader hesitated for a moment, then nodded, his pride taking a hit. "Let's get out of here," he muttered to his crew, turning to leave. The bikers started backing away, their arrogance now replaced by nervousness as they shuffled toward their bikes. One of them tried to make a joke to cover his fear. "You'll regret this, old man," he said, his voice lacking conviction. But George didn't flinch. He simply watched them retreat. As the bikers revved their engines and sped off, George turned back to the tactical team with a nod of gratitude. The men in gear nodded back and climbed into their vehicles, silently driving off, leaving George to enjoy the calm once more. The threat was over. The veteran had once again proven that age was no barrier to strength.